Welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove. I'm back from Boston, and I'm joined by a man who's back from Seattle. We're together again.
Indeed.
His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. It didn't seem like that big of a deal, but now that I think about it, when's the last time we were in studio together?
Before I went to Boston and you went to Seattle. Yeah, it was last week.
Was it? I couldn't remember if we were in studio together last week or not.
It's been a week.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
all right. Then I feel better.
It's been a week.
It's been?
It has been.
Yeah, it's been.
So we're going to talk USA-Canada, obviously, today. But first, you're in Seattle for MLS Cup.
I were.
I was in Boston for the clinical trial treatment that I've been on. I just wanted to start the show.
Mine was more fun, but yours is maybe better news.
Yeah. Mine had a happier event in the middle. Yeah, so basically we got some results from the clinical trial I've been doing, some scans, and it's good news. It's showing a good reduction in the size of the tumours, which basically means the clinical trial is working.
In your face tumors?
So far.
If they have faces. If they do, that's a problem.
I don't want face tumors.
They should not have faces. I'm no doctor.
The reason I wanted to share this is I haven't mentioned it for a while on the show because we didn't know if anything was successful or not. This is the first feedback.
Yep.
But also because, the money that I'm using to travel to Boston every 2 weeks is the money from the GoFundMe, which a lot of our listeners contributed to. So I want to let people know that it was money well spent.
Yes. It was, definitely, in the sense that things are working, things are shrinking.
Yeah.
That definitely seems like money well spent, yes.
Yeah, so I want to say thank you, again, to everybody who contributed to the GoFundMe, because that's literally what's allowed me to travel to Boston, pay for some stuff is covered by the trial, and then pay for accommodation and flights and all that kind of stuff.
You do look, I think, the healthiest I've seen you look in quite some time. There's definitely a period when your arms were skinny enough that it seemed like maybe don't pat him on the shoulder too hard or something might break.
That John Brooks style breakable.
Yes, exactly. I did start calling you Mr. Glass for a period of time, yes.
All right, so I just wanted to share that with listeners before we get down to business. Hopefully more good news on the way this week in the shape of the USA not going out in the group stage of the CONCACAF Nations League.
Yes. I do want to say one more thing about Seattle. It's kind of weird to say.
Yeah.
But Daryl basically chose not to go to Seattle because he had been to Boston, then straight from Boston he went to Germany. We get back from Germany.
Yeah.
Then you're in Boston again. Then you're going home to England for a little bit of time. So I think you did the math and realized you would have been like able to see your wife for 2 nights in a month and a half.
Yeah,
or
it would have been a long time gone. Yeah.
Right. So it wasn't necessarily health reasons, and I say that just because there was definitely a weird thing. It was really great to get to hang out with Joe Lowry and meet him one-on-one and interact and record.
Did it look like you'd replace me?
Like a younger, prettier glasses person.
Glasses person.
Yes. A younger, bespectacled person who likes tactics and asking difficult questions of managers. It was just sort of like that's right. This is my younger model. There's a midlife podcast crisis. And I drove here in a red Ferrari. So there you go.
I like to think you reinforce that narrative everywhere you went.
Of course. I did not.
Have you met my second one?
No, instead it was my second podcast. Well, I guess we don't. He doesn't come to the studio, so I can't claim to be podcast
right.
Or common law married.
You
with
don't cohabitate.
No, I do not. But with you, I do. You're still my number one. Don't worry.
That's good to know.
For now.
Well, for now. Well, we're cohabitating right now. We're going to talk USA-Canada. But first, I guess we've got to talk about Earnie Stewart.
Because I suppose we must.
A couple of days ago, Earnie Stewart essentially...
Just starting off with optimistic topics right here.
Called a press conference, right? But only of select journalists, what we could call sort of the tier one inner circle journalists. We're invited on a lot of press calls. We weren't invited on this one.
Yeah, whenever we're doing U.S. national team post-match press conferences, it was the journalists who were like, we're going to have Grant and then Steve and then Doug and then the bearded guy. That's usually my level, I think.
would not have been included in that first round.
No, I definitely would not.
And then other questions after that.
Yes, exactly. I get other questions, and I get, in the front row, the weird-looking one.
So anyway, Earnie Stewart called this press conference. The sort of basically senior journalists were all on it. And Earnie Stewart made clear that, one, Gregg Berhalter's job is not on the line with the result against Canada. If we lose against Canada, I'm not going to fire Gregg Berhalter, right? Here's the actual quote. Quote, we're looking at the future. So when I evaluate Gregg and the staff, what I've seen today, I'm a pleased man. An individual result is not going to change that, right? So Earnie Stewart just basically, from what I can tell, called this press conference, wanted to get the message out that Berhalter is not on the hot seat, right? This result is important, but he's not on the hot seat. We're not firing him if we don't beat Canada.
Right. Which I think we you and I kind of assumed.
We could have guessed.
Yeah, I think I definitely buy into the narrative that the only way Gregg Berhalter is not going to be allowed to see out his contract is if the United States really seems to struggle in World Cup qualifying.
Yes.
Similar to what happened with Jurgen Klinsmann.
Yeah, if we're a couple games in, it was looking like, oh no, it's happening again.
Yeah.
That's maybe when they would have to fire Gregg Berhalter when World Cup qualifications on the line.
With that said, I still don't think this was a particularly adept move from Earnie Stewart.
I half agree.
Okay.
I think it was the right move to back Gregg Berhalter. It was the right move to sort of make clear that we're committed to seeing this through, this kind of style of play experiment to see where it goes. But the phrasing that Earnie Stewart used didn't necessarily get the message across in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, I said this off air, but I'll repeat it on here. The best way I can explain it is aspects of that press conference felt like Frank Costanza calling a press conference to then air his grievances Festivus style. That it was like, I'm going to have a press conference to explain some things, and what I'm going to explain is that you're all wrong, and Gregg Berhalter's great, and I'm not going to fire him, and he's doing fine. And it was just sort of like, oh, okay, I guess. And so I'm oversimplifying, I know, and I'm making it more dramatic. It's just that with the way things are, with the fan base, with U.S. soccer.
He did set up an aluminum pole.
That was interesting. I was really excited to see where that was going to go. There was going to be some feats of strength. I would back him against some of those journalists, not all of them. But it's just, with the way things are, I get wanting to come out and say, I'm backing the manager, I'm sticking with him.
Yeah.
I'm still confused because, as we've heard, Brad Friedel talks about this, U.S. press corps, U.S. public is not so rabid that, I don't think anyone really thought oh, they're going to fire Berhalter if this doesn't go well. Yes, fans might think that. You could talk to most reporters. I think they all would have said no. So, and there were no articles being written about, or that I could see about this is it for Berhalter. So why Earnie Stewart came out as he did, I don't fully get, aside from I want to back my hire.
He's kind of probably been on Twitter, right? I mean, I'm not saying that he was responding just to all the Berhalter out stuff on Twitter, because Twitter can be a bit of an echo chamber. But I think when you also see the poor ticket sales, I'm not sure where they are right now, but at one point, a few days ago, only 8,000 tickets had been sold in Orlando for this USA v Canada game. We've heard from people who are saying, I'm not going to watch this game, I've had it. You know what I mean? So I think they see the frustration of fans, which kind of hurts the bottom line, and also, is not in Earnie Stewart's interest to have people not wanting to watch the national team. So I think he did want to sort of get out ahead of this and say, hey, there's no point hoping for the US to lose. We're not going to fire Berhalter if we lose.
I hope I'm not just going down the same path here, but I guess I would like to have this conversation more fully, because that confuses me though. Is but what's the point of that? If everybody's upset, if he feels oh, I've seen people on Twitter, we've gotten emails, we've gotten messages, people aren't very happy, so I'm going to come out and say one result doesn't matter. Okay, so then people are well, it's been 11 months and we haven't loved all the results. Why are you saying what? It just felt like some of his answers lent themselves to being blown up on Twitter, almost to the extent of it reminded me of a manager blaming the officials when the game went poorly, so that's the talking point. And I just don't if your goal is to back Berhalter, but then also deal with negative ticket sales. I don't see how those two things work together.
If I was Earnie Stewart, if I was advising US soccer, I would have said go and essentially not just say that I'm a pleased man.
Yeah.
I would really make the pitch for what I think is happening, which is we've committed to this style of play.
Right.
It takes a long time to implement this style of play. Let's see the experiment through and see where it goes. Right. It's not over yet. CONCACAF Nations League isn't over yet. World Cup qualifying hasn't even started. Let's give this style of play a chance. I think it should have been more of a salesman-y thing rather than an airing of grievances kind of thing.
Yeah. I agree with that entirely, because as an example, to say well, there's been one bad result.
What are you talking about?
He had the thing about one bad game isn't gonna sway us from our
an individual
from our
result is not going to change.
Right.
But I think that's fair to say. He's essentially saying I'm not going to fire him if he loses this Canada game.
Well,
right?
I think he's talking about the Canada game they lost. That was how I read that one.
We're looking at the future. So when I evaluate Gregg and the staff, what I've seen today, I'm a pleased man. An individual result is not going to change that. That's in response to the idea that is Berhalter's job in danger if he doesn't win this game against Canada in Orlando. Right. But this is the problem: is that I think phrases like that can get misinterpreted, or people can start taking it out of context and arguing with it in a way that's not how Earnie Stewart meant it.
Yes, but I would extend it further to because it wasn't a prepared remark, it was answering reporters' question. Now that you've explained that, yes, the question was, if he loses this game, are you going to fire Gregg Berhalter? That answer makes way more sense.
That's what I'm assuming, by the way. I'm assuming that this was answering the journalist questions as opposed to calling these journalists up and saying, like, here's my prepared statement. But if this was a prepared statement, it should have been better prepared.
But I 100% read that. I'm like, truthfully, as he was saying that Canada loss isn't enough to freak us out.
Let me ask you
because
this,
there was so much response to that of being like, only one result? What are you talking about?
I want to ask you this. Did you read the quotes from Earnie Stewart and then have that reaction? Or did you read the responses on Twitter?
No, I read the 3 tweets from Stephen Goff.
Okay, you see, it wasn't like you were like echoing what you'd seen from other people. Okay.
No, because like I know people are frustrated, and we have found that we try to not read Twitter during games because we'll be thinking like, oh, this is happening, and then we'll see 5 people say this is terrible, and suddenly we start watching the game from that perspective, trying to figure out if that's actually happening, and it changes the way things are. So for me, reading a bunch of like, no, this is terrible, this is bad, this is bad, this is terrible, that doesn't really help me. But those were the things that jumped out to me from that interview, because I definitely read that as like, oh, he's saying we're not so worried about this one result, which in my mind meant that's the only result that they have found particularly problematic, whereas you're right, that it probably was responding to a question about what happens if you lose.
Yeah.
So that makes more sense. I get that as well. I still don't love the no matter what, essentially, aspect of things.
I think there's also probably some elasticity to that, right? If we lose 20-0, probably Berhalter gets fired. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but an absolute is an absolute.
Yeah.
And like...
But that's why I think we can overinterpret these things. There is a performance against Canada that gets Gregg Berhalter fired.
All right. Philosophical again here, but like, if you're holding a press conference to explain why you're backing the manager, aren't you sort of inviting scrutiny and a level of detail in what you're saying that it then needs to be very well said? Because otherwise, if you're going to go out and hold a press conference,
I would argue yes.
The press is going to report what you said, and if it's easily taken out of context, or you misstate something, or you say an absolute.
That's why this stuff is hard, and you have to be careful what you say, right?
And that is, I think, at its core, a big part of my frustration with this is that it doesn't feel careful to me. It feels like sort of I want to back Berhalter, but I also want people to like understand we're listening to their concerns, but simultaneously say like some of your concerns aren't fair. Yeah. Like it just felt like there was too many things going on with this.
It should have been more of a plea as well. Maybe it should have been a plea to fans like, hey, give this time. He hasn't even been in the job a year, right? We haven't lost to Canada and not finished top of the CONCACAF Nations League group yet, right? You know, there should have been maybe more of an appeal to get behind the team. Because, I mean, I'm a believer in this. If this experiment with a new style of play works, then it will be kind of glorious, right? And I'd say the results of the experiment aren't in yet. Some of the data, like maybe the results and performance away to Canada was not encouraging, but the experiment's not over yet. So let's withhold judgment until we have more data, basically.
Yeah. Maybe they should hire you to give these press conferences, because I think that would have gone a long way. And I wrote that and I retweeted. I think Dave Martinez had a whole thing about like what he could have said that would have been just as or more useful, and said the exact same thing. And then there were people like, well, that's not specific enough. I want this, I want that. And there's always going to be people who are frustrated by it. But I absolutely think that if it had been a more like, look, ticket sales haven't been great. We know people are frustrated. We know this is a difficult time for U.S. soccer fans. But we promise you it is difficult for us too. And it's a thing that keeps us up every night. And we're working as hard as we can. And we know there's frustration, but it's a long-term plan. And our long-term plan is to put us in a better position than we've ever been. Like right there. That lets people feel heard and also lets people know, like, oh, they care just as much as I do.
They're working hard to get it right.
Exactly.
Right?
Instead of come on, guys. Like, it's a Nations League game. It doesn't really matter. It'll be fine. Like, I think I said this to you off air as well, and this will hopefully be my final point on this one, that, like, I believed U.S. soccer in the past when they said everything's fine. And when they said Klinsmann knows what he's doing, we were like, okay, like, if you all want to do that, and we ended up not calling.
But at the same time, we know now that they were thinking about firing Klinsmann for a little old while, right? And if it wasn't for, say, Dan Flynn's heart surgery, they would have fired him after I forgot what it's called now, the CONCACAF Cup, you know, the Gold Cup, Confederations Cup playoff game that we lost.
Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Yeah. And instead, they publicly backed him. And so to me, it's like, you guys did this once.
Well, they just didn't fire him, right? There was no statement of there was never a statement of we're supporting Klinsmann. There was just like there was the status quo until they fired him.
Fair, but I guess in my mind, like we were trusting them to like execute the game plan such that we qualify for another World Cup. We trusted them that like everything was right, and if it's not, that they're going to take action. And I was willing to go with them until we did not qualify and they didn't take action.
And they did, right? We lost the first 2 games and they replaced the coach. Yes, and then we still didn't qualify. Yeah.
And then we had a year of interim, whatever. I guess all I mean to say is that my patience is at a point now where it feels a little fool me once, shame on me. shame on you, whatever.
So
shame on you. Fool me once, don't get shamed again. I'll go the George Bush route.
Henry Bushnell wrote a really good story for Yahoo, kind of outlining this whole situation. And it's pretty much a big part of it, if I understand it correctly, and I agree with this, is what you just said, right? Everybody feels burned by US soccer, feels that it's not well run. There's the year in the wilderness with Dave Sarachan. And I think because of all that, everybody's frustration is built up. Everyone's patience is very, very low. And so as a result, it's kind of Gregg Berhalter's not getting the sympathy or leeway that a coach might have got in a situation where people trusted the federation more.
Yeah.
So we're making Gregg Berhalter pay for the sins of the federation.
Yeah,
which kind of isn't fair. And I think if we cut the experiment short because we're frustrated with US soccer as opposed to frustrated with Gregg Berhalter, I think that's a mistake.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get that. And I want to, maybe this is an unfair comparison to make, but, and full disclosure, I like Kate Margraf. She has been personally nice to us on occasion, so I want to, get that out of the way. But I would say, look at the way the women's coaching search was conducted.
Kate Margraf did the women's GM.
She did. Yeah. Thank you. And we got stories about how, these candidates weren't considered because their clubs wouldn't allow them to be interviewed. And we had some people rule themselves out early.
The Arsenal coach.
Yeah, and I felt like we got little bits and pieces that were maybe intentionally leaked, and we got little bits and pieces of why people weren't considered. And it ended with Vlatko, and, look at the way that was, people responded to that was yeah, this makes a lot of sense. It's a good hire. Here are the reasons why. It's been clearly spelled out, but it's because I think a big part of that is we trusted that there was a process that led to him being hired. It wasn't, here's our guy, and then we hired him 6 months later.
Well, there's also a lot of goodwill built up around the women's national team program because they just won the World Cup instead of just spent a year under an interim coach.
Yeah, but I guess what I mean is definitely true. But what I mean is more so the transparency of that coaching search or the relative transparency of the women's coach. Yeah. Contrast that with the men's side where it was it was basically coaches saying, no, I haven't been spoken to yet, or oh, yeah, they did speak to me once. Yeah. We never really got a clear idea of who was spoken to when and how many people were considered.
It's also just about the speed of it as well, right? It's happened fairly quickly, whereas there was the Sarachan year, and then there was a few months after that before. So it was about a year, right? Yeah. Before Berhalter was eventually announced as coach.
So I guess I would simultaneously more transparency and less transparency. Less transparency in their emotional feelings, more transparency in what they're actually doing.
All right, are you ready? Maybe an ad read, and then we'll get to talking about the big game.
I got several more points on Earnie Stewart. No, yes. I think I'm good to go.
All right. Today's show is sponsored by fuboTV. fuboTV, it's so good, I now use it exclusively.
Really?
Yeah.
You've gone exclusive,
Well, I've told you I cancelled.
You broke up with your other streaming platforms?
I had a TV provider, which I won't name, who, when I moved house, I didn't take them with me.
Did you do it in a public place in case they made a disturbance?
I should have. I should have asked them to meet me.
Just you on speakerphone with their customer service?
They did try to persuade me to stay. I was
of course they did.
I've already got a replacement, and their name is Fubo.
Can we discount your cable bill by $5? Will that do it? It will not, because we have Fubo, the only soccer-focused TV streaming service with obvious channels like FS1, FS2, NBC Sports, beIN Sports, but they've also got the other ones, the lesser, heralded ones, but the way more important ones, like TUDN, Universo 11, and Goal TV.
And the TUDN Extra. This is a recent-ish edition. I think I actually don't know the number. It's maybe 10 or so extra channels.
Yeah.
So that rather than just TUDN showing one international game or one Champions League game, then all the other games on the extra channels.
Yeah, and looking at the schedule for the international break, TUDN Extra factoring into my equation on a number of occasions, because like Friday afternoon, Bosnia v Italy, I would watch that game. That is available on TUDN Extra 6. That's 2:45 p.m. Do you want to go through some of the games we've got coming up on?
Yeah, I'll hear a couple. Yeah.
I've also got Northern Ireland v Netherlands Saturday afternoon at 2:45.
That was
one
nearly
also
an upset last time, right?
TUDN Extra 6.
Yeah.
There we go. You need the extras. Russia v Belgium is Saturday morning at 11:50, which probably means noon. That's on TUDN normal. Sunday is a TUDN kind of day because at 11:50 Kosovo v England. That's TUDN.
Yes.
And at 5:50 Costa Rica v Haiti. I find strangely appealing, and I don't know why.
Is that Nations League? Yeah. You've also got Brazil, Argentina.
I've heard of those two teams.
I can't remember now if it's Friday or Saturday on beIN
I think it was Friday.
Okay. And then USA v Canada. So Fubo does not...
is that happening?
USA v Canada is happening Friday night. Fubo does not have ESPN as part of the package, but you'll find pretty much any game that ESPN has is also on a Spanish language channel. So USA v Canada is on TUDN and Unimas at the same time.
And it could be a Friday evening TUDN kind of night because you've got USA Canada at 7, around that we think. Then around 9, Panama v Mexico. Okay. So you could watch both of those and get some hopefully good soccer.
I might stick around if the US looks like they're going to be in the
big old if.
Finals.
Big old if.
After the international break, coming up in just a little while, there's the Champions League is back in action. If you have Fubo, you get access to something which most people don't have access to. It's called Zona Football. Zona Football is essentially...
I wish they just called it Zona Roja and really just made it clear what they were ripping off.
So I'm not familiar with this, but I've been told that there's a thing for the NFL called Red Zone, where essentially they will just... It's one channel, but they will show you all the action, essentially all the touchdowns happening.
Do you know what Zona Roja translates to?
Yes, I do. Happening from all around the league, right?
Yes.
So Zona Football is the same concept where you just watch one channel while the Champions League stuff is happening, and they'll go to the Juventus game and somebody scored, and they'll go to the Roma game and someone scored. Are Roma in the Champions League this year?
Yes.
That may have been a bad example. I'm not 100% sure. So essentially they'll just go around the league, around the Champions League to where the goals are happening.
I hope Red Zone has, or at least last time I watched Red Zone, had the way over-caffeinated guy whose job was just to keep it moving through the games and make sure there was some connective material. I hope they have that as well. So,
Zona Football Caffeine Plus.
Yes. Just and then we go to the next game and there's been a goal. That's what I need, Daryl. That's what I need in my life.
If you need fuboTV
I think I do, and I have it, but other people might just need to get it.
Including if you want the 500 hours of cloud DVR, which really is magnificent.
I want to jump in to say, by the way, you, Daryl Grove, the genius of you is appreciated by me and Joe Lowry because we were doing the MLS Cup review, and a feature you pointed out is now my new favorite feature. In the 88th minute, I logged into Fubo and hit record. So that
and it recorded from minute zero.
It recorded from minute zero, so we could then go back and watch whatever we needed to, despite me forgetting to DVR until the 88th minute.
It's like a magnificent cheat code.
It really is. It feels like magic.
Fubo
feels like magic.
And even if you miss that, it's available for 3 days as a replay. Even if you don't press record at all. It is amazing.
Industrial Streaming and Magic is the name of their new company.
I'll tell you one more thing I love about Fubo. If you do the free trial, like everywhere else, they take your payment information when you sign up for the free trial. Unlike everywhere else, when the free trial is about to expire, they tell you, they remind you, they say, hey, your free trial is about to expire, just so you know. Because a lot of other companies would give you the free trial and then sort of deliberately not remind you so that it rolls into you paying for it. Right? So I really like the honesty from Fubo, the way they do that. Even better, if you go to fubotv.com/TSS, you get the 1 week free trial, but then your first 3 months, if you choose to sign up, you'll get $10 off the family package. $10 off your first 3 months every month of the family package. If you go to fubotv.com/TSS, the link will, of course, be in the show notes.
There we are. So thank you very much to fuboTV for sponsoring today's episode and for making our lives way easier when it comes to streaming and watching games and rewatching games. We will probably be DVRing the USA-Canada game. Should we talk a little bit more in depth about that one? Maybe starting with Canada?
Yeah, well, actually, can I just set up the situation just in case people are maybe lost? So US lost to Canada away last time out. We need to win this game if we want to progress in the CONCACAF Nations League.
Right.
A draw is not good enough because Canada will finish ahead of us on points. A win is good enough.
Question for you then.
Yeah.
I mostly know the answer to this one, but just in case some people don't. Why do we need to win the Nations League?
Why do we need to win the Nations League?
This group. Why do we need to get out of this group?
Because then we go to the semi-finals to face some stiff opposition, like maybe Mexico or Costa Rica. Semi-finals are next June.
And then what happens if we win the whole thing?
I don't know. We get a trophy.
All right. So we get a trophy. So is the idea then, I wanted to clarify more so because I think there are still people who are like, yeah, but it's a relatively meaningless game. This game doesn't really matter. I had those responses to me being frustrated with this press conference was like, yeah, who cares? And I think there are still people who have that mentality. So when you're like, it's a must-win game, we have to win this to advance. Yeah. I'm just wondering if there's more to it aside from playing honestly, for pride, going to the next round, playing competitive games.
CONCACAF Nations League, it's not life or death, right? It's not the World Cup. Because if we go to the semi-finals, it's just 2 games next June.
Right.
But in terms of growing the US national team program, getting us back on track, I think it's really important in terms of getting back on track that we start doing things like getting to we should be in the best 4 teams in CONCACAF, right? We literally weren't in the Hex. We weren't in the best 4 teams, which would have got us, 4th place would have got us the playoff spot, right? So this is a chance to get back to that level of being in the top 4 teams in CONCACAF. And then if things are looking good by June 2020, maybe being the top team in CONCACAF once again.
Right.
That's why it's important. It's like proof of concept. Everybody can start feeling better about the national team.
And I'm assuming it also factors into actual qualifying where you fit into the qualifying schedule.
Yeah, well, for the World Cup, World Cup qualifying, I think the US will make the hex anyway as one of the top 6 ranked teams. Canada are trying to make the top 6, which is what makes them kind of so competitive in terms of motivated.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, with that in mind, given that we've heard that Canada have already played the most important game of their lives, how will they follow that up against what I assume is the second most important game of their lives?
Yeah, Berhalter said that in today's press conference, right?
Yeah.
That one of the reasons they lost away was that Canada were playing the most important game of their lives.
I think starting a game for Bayern Munich is probably kind of an important game for
he
Alphonso
meant
Davies.
the Canadian. See, you're deliberately taking it out of context, right? He meant the Canadian national team, not Alphonso Davies.
Yes.
Yeah.
I suppose that's true.
You know it.
Yeah.
Here's what we know about Canada. In that game, when we travelled to BMO Field, Canada's coach John Herdman played a 4-2-2-2, a box midfield, massively outnumbered our two-man central midfield of Michael Bradley and Christian Roldan, and absolutely took us apart tactically. That is what happened up in Canada.
Yep.
We learned, we knew this before, but the players to watch, the players worth watching are, of course, Alphonso Davies, who has been starting at left back for Bayern Munich. He started up front in that game when we went up to Canada. So I have no idea where he's going to play.
I don't either. I do think we'll probably see something approximating what we saw in Canada, but more defensive. I think Gregg Berhalter's sort of expecting that as well. We heard him in his pregame press conference today talking about we expect them to be a bit more defensive.
Yeah.
They only needed tie.
Yeah.
He said tie. That's why it stood out. We need more than that. So I think he's expecting them to sit deep and counter. And if that is something they do, if they try to sit off and frustrate, my assumption is we probably still see Jonathan David and Alphonso Davies deployed as sort of the outlets, like a la Leicester City a little bit, like two very fast, threatening strikers that they can kind of keep high and maybe spread wide a little bit, or just
they can chase balls into the channel. They can chase balls wide.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly. So I think we'll still see him deployed further up the field as opposed to further wide. Certainly not at left back.
I think in the Gold Cup against Mexico, I want to say they played a back five, and I have seen definitely listed a 5-4-1 with Alphonso Davies as like the left wing back. There's a chance that Canada go to Orlando and are just like, all right, the new challenge, because the 4-2-2-2 was new, right? It was like a thing that Herdman had designed specifically for the US. This might, if he's super smart, like maybe he has a next move for the away game, which is like a really compact 5-4-1 that's really hard to break down, but then hits us on the counter with like Jonathan David up front and Alphonso Davies joining the attack from left wing back. It's entirely possible that we don't see the exact same formation.
Yes. That said, I also think it might be foolish to change it if you're Canada. I think
there's that argument too.
It works.
This is happening on a Canadian podcast somewhere. They're having this debate about how they should approach this game. Right?
They are, but I like. Despite what Gregg Berhalter says, I don't think of Toronto as being this foreign wilderness that's incredibly difficult for players to adapt to playing in. Again, some of your U.S. players play there for a living.
Yeah.
And so it's not as though it's a Champions League home and away sort of situation. If anything, as we've already talked about, I don't know how much of a rip-roaring atmosphere there's going to be in Orlando.
I'll be interested to see how much support there is for the U.S. team versus folding my arms, Show me, entertain me.
And so and with everything we've seen from Gregg Berhalter, I think if you're a Canadian coach and you've been watching the US, you're not going to expect him to really deviate from his plan too much. And it was a plan that was essentially overwhelmed by a Canada team that lost their starting holding midfielder, 14 minutes into the game or something like that?
McKay was replaced by Liam Fraser, and the system was so good that Fraser could just slot in and do it.
So I almost think that it makes sense to kind of do the exact same thing and sort of challenge the United States to find a way through in a way that they could not in the home leg.
I will say I hope that's what Canada do, because I would like the opportunity to see what does Gregg Berhalter do faced with the same problem again, where he has ample evidence that what he did last time didn't work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I like that sort of just as a almost a mental challenge and a challenge to Gregg Berhalter. What have you got? Can you solve this puzzle?
Yes. So that is definitely a possibility that they will go for if they did go with the exact same shape, roughly.
4-2-2-2.
Yeah, we would assume that Doniel Henry, who I believe was suspended in the last game, he'll come back in and start at center back. And then we assume Marc-Anthony Kaye is good enough to go this time round. So we would say it's going to be Kaye and PT.
Piet,
Right?
I would
Piet.
say.
I did that last time. I thought it was PT and it was Piet. Thank you. Piet, then Arfield and Osorio, and then
he's a pair of good players, right?
Yeah.
We're familiar with Osorio, creative player, pretty good on the dribble, nice pass and move. Jonathan Osorio for Toronto. The guy that maybe we didn't know before, but I think I did some research on him, was impressed, and then played really well in the game. Scott Arfield, really precise passer of
Captain,
the ball,
right?
Really useful in central midfield. I think he's actually Scottish, but with Canadian heritage. Plays for Rangers. Really good player, worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah. So I think we could see Canada kind of do that same 11 more or less, and it could be effective. I do think from some of the statements Gregg Berhalter was making, I think he expects a sit deep and counterattack Canada for this game.
Why do you say that?
Because he was asked the question about like do you want to make a statement roughly, or like what should we expect from this game? And he said that like there's always the desire to make a statement in the first 15 minutes.
Yeah.
The way he said that makes me think that they're definitely going to be going for it in the first 15. The US.
Well, again, the question specifically was, what are you going to do in the first 15 minutes? Right. So this isn't something Berhalter volunteered. He didn't identify the first 15 minutes as something he wants to do.
Was he asked about the first 15?
He was.
Okay, I may have missed that. But the key thing to me was the second part. But we also can't get carried away.
Yeah.
And I think that to me speaks to we can't overly commit numbers forward knowing that they have Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David who can counter on us quickly.
Yeah.
And there's just a few more about like the way they're going to approach this one. It seemed like his game plan is sort of predicated on we're going to have way more of the ball. We're going to have way more possession in their half.
It sounds depressingly familiar, though, right? It's an assumption that he made last time.
I mean, yeah, we'll see. But maybe he's being a master media manipulator, and in actuality, he's going to change it all up at the last second.
Well, that's not the evidence so far.
Not so much.
You ready to talk United States?
Sure.
Okay. Let's get to the roster first, because people may not know what the final 23-man roster looks like. Do you mind if we just quickly read through it? Maybe we'll just go back and forth. Your goalkeepers on the roster are Zach Steffen with his tendonitis, Brad Guzan, Sean Johnson, Matt Turner. Those are your three goalkeepers. Do you want me to let you know the defenders?
No, I can stall for a moment while I pull up the roster. I'll say this. I found it very funny, your conversation with Brian Sciaretta, which was excellent, in which you kind of, I think, floated my concern that Zach Steffen wasn't included but then started, and Brian Sciaretta shut that one down pretty hard. I would say from my perspective, I brought this up with Ivis Galarcep when we were in Seattle, and he equally was like, no, he has tendonitis. That's pretty much it.
This is the thing, right? That a lot of people want to see some sort of conspiracy in Zach Steffen not making the roster or not being included on the roster because of tendonitis, but playing for Dusseldorf as if it means that he is rebelling against US soccer or rebelling against Gregg Berhalter. I mean, I don't know if it was Brian that made this point on the show, but Steffen and Berhalter are tight. Yeah. Right? Berhalter brought Steffen back from a failing career in Germany and made him the player he is today. There's no way that is happening. So no more conspiracies.
I would agree with that. And then also I think Sciaretta and Ivis both made the point that no, tendonitis really is a thing where if you ice it for 10 days and stay off of it, it kind of goes away for a while. So, okay. Yeah, I feel a little bit about that.
All right, so one more time. We're going to go through the 23. Goalkeepers are Brad Guzan, Sean Johnson, Matt Turner.
Defenders, you've got DeAndre Yedlin, Tam Rame. I'm just going to mispronounce every single name intentionally. John Brooks, Aaron Long, Daniel Lovitz, Walker Zimmerman, Reggie Cannon, Nick Lima, Serginho Dest. Be afraid, Canada. Be afraid.
I mean, Serginho Dest is a big addition from last time, right?
They've even added the Teal Day. That's how much of an addition
that
he is.
Literally could be a difference maker in this game. I'm kind of excited about that. Midfielders are Sebastian Lletget, Weston McKennie, Alfredo Morales, Christian Roldan, Jackson Ewell and Will Trapp. Michael Bradley injured his ankle in the MLS Cup final. He is not available.
I would say Roman
selection.
Torres injured Michael Bradley's ankle, but yes. And then your attacking options would be Giassi Zardes, Jordan Morris, Paul Arriola, Josh Sargent, and Tyler Boyd.
No Christian Pulisic because he injured his hip playing for Chelsea. And again, he did injure his hip. This isn't some Christian Pulisic tantrum or rebellion. He's injured. He can't play.
He cannot.
It's really that simple.
And then with the attacking options, worth noting, Josie Altidore did play the final few minutes of MLS Cup, but obviously did that while playing through injury, which is a thing I think he has done consistently for them. But then obviously it doesn't make sense to really then force him into a same situation with the U.S.
I like it. I like not having a half-fit Josie Altidore. It's the most frustrating thing because you see flashes of what the fully fit Josie can do, but you don't get the full thing. So it's better to just let him sit this one out.
Even if it's kind of sad. And then obviously still no Tyler Adams. We hope that is rectified sooner rather than later. Yeah. But I mentioned that just to say that we're going into this game against Canada not to lower expectations, but kind of to lower expectations. That means we are missing Christian Pulisic, Zach Steffen, Michael Bradley, Tyler Adams, Josie Altidore. That's potentially 5 starters right there that will not be available.
Tim Ware, who may have made the 23, also not available. Yeah, so it's kind of a half strength
US
team if you want to think of it that way. I have a theory about this game. I think this might weirdly be to our benefit.
Okay.
Because I have come to be a believer in the idea that the way Gregg Berhalter likes to play, Michael Bradley ends up being a problem in terms of the way we defend. He definitely would have started this game. It may be a blessing in disguise that someone else ends up starting in defensive midfield for the United States.
Because we talked about this when we did our kind of roster preview prediction show last week, that if you look at the 20 players that were called in for the sort of pre-camp the MLS-based players, my concern there was like you're going to remove some of them obviously to go with the U23s, but if you're practicing all these rhythms and patterns and like progressions, and then Michael Bradley comes in and is like, well, that's not what I want to do, and I'm not as well versed in that, so I'm going to do this, and my approximation of that, it doesn't quite flow as well, and it did feel like a potential problem that they would have to overcome right away.
And I'd also say the absence of Christian Pulisic, obviously that it's not great to lose easily your best player, but there is sometimes an over-reliance on Christian Pulisic's dribbling, right? And maybe, Christian will fix it for us. I'm quite interested in the idea of watching this team with its main dribbling threat removed and see if this possession team steps up its game in the absence of Christian Pulisic. I honestly think there might be a sort of Ewing theory type scenario that plays to the US's advantage.
It's possible. Berhalter was asked about how do you replace Christian Pulisic, and he basically said, I don't think we
Did he say no one can dribble like Pulisic?
He said there's basically we have to compensate for his 1v1 dribbling. He added, I don't think there's any, most teams in the world can't replace a Christian Pulisic, so it's not an issue just for us. But his way of dealing with it that he specifically said was physicality and speed.
All right. So that's kind of what I said. Maybe I agree with Gregg Berhalter.
There you go.
Yeah, that will not make me popular on Twitter. And then I would also say the addition of Serginho Dest and the return of Alfredo Morales
and John Brooks, I'd say.
And John Brooks, yeah. I honestly think that could make a huge difference to the way this team plays, right? John Brooks is easily our best defender, both with and without the ball, right? Maybe not if he's sort of isolated and 1v1, but in terms of just stepping and winning things, in terms of heading things away, and then especially in terms of just possessing the ball, passing it out of the back. He's a huge asset. Serginho Dest, I'm just all out excited to have fullbacks on either side. If it's Cannon and Dest, both getting forward. If it's the US trying to play their way out of trouble, Dest is very good at sort of getting out of tight situations in a way that, let's say, Daniel Lovitz is not. And then Alfredo Morales bringing sort of the knock 'em over attitude to midfield. His quote that Nico Cantor reported, "We have to be ready to kill them."
Yep.
This is an Alfredo Morales quote from this week. Can you imagine someone like Michael Bradley or Will Trapp saying that?
No.
It's a bit,
I can absolutely imagine Alfredo Morales saying it. We met him. He's intense.
Exactly. So I really like the idea of that intensity coming into the US midfield.
Yeah, as do I. Of the three you mentioned, strangely, one of the ones that I sort of have more of a concern about is Serginho Dest, just because from what we've seen of him with the US and with Ajax to some extent, he is very good with the ball at his feet. He's very good attacking and making overlapping runs and providing late arriving support for the attack. 1v1 defending has not been his specialty, again, for club or country.
I don't think it's quite as bad as you're concerned about. It's not his strength, but I don't think he's a liability.
I don't think he's a liability either, but I think against pacey, clever attackers who can beat you with speed, but then the next time they might beat you with a bit of skill as you're prepared for the speed.
Yeah.
That does seem like what Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David can do, especially in a sort of sit deep and then counterattack model. So I just worry about the moment when Serginho Dest has to track back at full speed, and then there's a little bit of scale, and suddenly he's maybe overrun the ball or something like that. So I say that more so as a thing that I will be keeping an eye on, as a thing I look forward to seeing Serginho Dest lock down that left side, which is also where I think he'll play. All
right, before we get to what we hope is the US starting lineup and what we think maybe Berhalter could or realistically could do in terms of a change of approach compared to what he did in October, today's show is sponsored by a returning sponsor. It's Audible. Audible has the world's largest selection of audiobooks and audio entertainment, including Audible Originals.
Can you tell me about Audible Originals?
Yeah, so these Audible Originals did not exist back when we ran a campaign for them. Well, it's got to be 2 or 3 years ago now, right? Audible Originals are stories created exclusively for audio, including documentaries, exclusive audiobooks, and scripted shows that you can't hear anywhere else. So this is Audible essentially creating their own entertainment channel of exclusive content.
Exactly. And then with the convenient Audible app, you can listen anytime, anywhere, and on any device. So that would be mobile, Alexa-enabled devices, Bluetooth, more. So So you can be like listening on your car ride home via your car speakers. You can put your headphones in once you park and like listen to it continue as you walk into the house. And then once you get home, you can put it on the speakers there and continue to listen. You never have to stop not engaging with humanity.
Your seamless digital life. Yeah, not engaging with anyone.
Nah, it's overrated.
So I had a look on Audible to see what sort of soccer content they have. They have all sorts. They have zonal marking by Michael Cox, which is something I've been really interested in listening to.
I'm 18 pages into it, like the actual physical book.
Oh, you've gone old school.
I have. Yeah. I have. And I think
how very last century of you.
I know, right? I might rather have the audiobook read to me. Yeah. I would enjoy that immensely.
I also saw How to Watch Soccer by Mr. Ruud Gullit. I've always been curious about that because I assume I would agree with this advice, but there may be some things in there that we don't do that maybe Ruud Gullit could advise me to do.
How much MLS do you think is in that conversation?
Not a lot.
You don't think so?
Not a lot.
I do like that.
He probably just says, the rules are too confusing, don't watch it.
Yeah, don't do that. I do enjoy Jonathan Wilson has 2 audiobooks on there, including the classic Inverting the Pyramid.
Yes.
I like to think that he and Michael Cox now have an Audible audiobook rivalry, and they're just going to keep releasing titles on there until one of them reigns supreme.
Actually, a lot of people say they want to consume Inverting the Pyramid, but they find reading the first few chapters really tough going. Maybe listening to it as an audiobook.
My hand is in the air.
Yeah, is the way to go, yeah.
Jonathan Wilson really approached that book with like, I'm going to make this really hard as like your beginning obstacle that you have to get over. Once you get over that, everything's way easier. But buckle up for some facts.
So if you sign up for Audible, you can get a 30-day trial, and you can choose 1 audiobook and 2 Audible originals absolutely free. Visit audible.com/TSS or text TSS to 500 500. That's interesting. I've never downloaded an app that way before. If you text TSS to 500 500, it looks like maybe you'll get the app and you'll be signed up for the offer.
So one more time, you can choose 1 audiobook and 2 Audible originals absolutely free, absolutely included in there because they mean what they say, unlike maybe U.S. soccer.
Hey.
Visit audible.com/TSS or text TSS to 500-500.
You don't put the dash in your phone.
You do. You have to. It's 500 DASH and then 500.
You do not.
It's not.
It's not.
No.
500 500. Thank you to Audible for sponsoring today's show, even though they knew Taylor would do that.
Even though they knew. Should we continue to talk U.S. potential lineups, maybe?
Let's do it. Okay. What is the U.S. lineup and shape that could conceivably happen, knowing what we know about Gregg Berhalter, on Friday night, that would make you happiest?
That's a really difficult question.
Yeah.
So
basically, what do we want to see that is within the realms of possibility?
I mean, I think that's way more of a limiting thing than maybe you do, because in my mind, we've seen him do pretty much the same things. We've seen some variation, but my assumption is we'll see something approximating a 4-3-3, which becomes a 4-4-2 defensively.
Yeah.
So I think within that, that's kind of where I am, is like almost a 4-3-3 is the easiest way to explain this.
Okay.
But I would like to see things like, I'm going to assume it's going to be Paul Arriola and Jordan Morris. One thing that we saw...
Arriola on the left, Morris on the right. Okay.
And one thing that we have seen that I thought worked particularly well in certain games for the U.S. national team under Berhalter is one or both of them pushing very high and almost at times being in a 4-2-4, occasionally in a 4-3-3. But I think that helps with some of the like blocking off of options.
Oh, we're talking
limiting.
The defensive shape here.
Yeah, basically that like I want to see those two start, but I want to see them push a little bit higher up than we've seen in recent games.
Okay. I actually, my preferred... okay, well, maybe we can finish the lineup a little bit later. What I would like is when the US sets up defensively to essentially pull back a little bit.
Okay.
I would like to see either the 4-4-2 shape, but like really compact and deep. You know what I mean? Just like you're not coming through and we're just going to make it really hard for you to come through the middle. Or I would like to see an actual shape change to something like a 4-5-1, 4-1-4-1. Sort of like the US women played against Sweden, actually, where you have like literally a one defensive midfielder, then a line of 4, and then just one striker. Because what I haven't liked is having the 2 strikers provide a little bit of pressure in like that mid-defensive block type thing, but not enough pressure to actually cause trouble, and then really just leaving 2 central midfielders isolated, and then Canada have too many men, our midfield gets overwhelmed, and Canada play through. Solve that problem, put more bodies in midfield. 4-1-4-1 gives you 3 central midfielders and a nice, easy-to-understand structure.
I'm fine with that. The common ground that I think we can both like occupy is we don't want to see a front 2 standing 15 yards ahead of a midfield four with only two central midfielders.
Yeah, because it's not enough men to actually win the ball back or even really cause that much trouble.
No, and I would even say, like, we went back and watched the opening 10 minutes or so against Jamaica, which is one that we've talked about previously as being kind of maybe the best.
The Gold Cup semi-final.
Yeah, and even there, those shape problems existed. It was just Jamaica didn't really try to play through the middle. Yes. They were just happy to go long.
Well, in that, I think that was one of the games where that 4-4-2 defensive mid-block worked. Because what we think the goal of it is just to deny the opposition any balls, easy balls into midfield, force them to go long with riskier passes, win the ball back, and then we have the ball, and then we have possession, and then we start building. And I honestly think it can work against a team like Jamaica, but it doesn't work against decent opposition, and even to the level of, and admittedly better than previously Canada and above, will exploit that sort of lack of numbers in midfield.
Because I agree. Because
they'll find the space and use it.
With Jamaica, there was sort of like the two center backs would drop on either side of Andre Blake, and he would play it to one of them. They'd play it back. He played to the other center back. He'd play it back, and it would go to the third center back or the center back who got the ball initially, and then he would just boot it long. But they were never really under any pressure. There was never any U.S. player like really forcing them into that long ball.
But they never had any options for short passes, which is kind of the point, right?
Yes, but I'm also saying I don't know how much they looked for those. Like I think a team like Canada, I guess what I'm saying is I don't think you even have to be that next level tier. I think you just have to have the patience to slow down and wait for one of your players to show in the middle. And I do think with that shape, eventually you'll find space or somebody open who can then turn and has nobody around them for 10 yards.
Okay, so since we're doing this as well, the other thing I would like to see, but I think is completely unrealistic, is for the US to go all out and press. Yeah. I would love for the US to have like the front two step and then the midfielders step with them and the wide guys step and the fullbacks are at midfield and we're just like up on Canada and they can't go anywhere. And the reason I don't think we'll do that at all is because in the press conference,
there it is.
Berhalter literally talked about he even talked about how he likes the way Liverpool get numbers around the ball.
I think what he actually said was, I know a lot of people like the way Liverpool play.
And he essentially said they get numbers around the ball, but they leave themselves open to counterattacks, and that's what we don't want to do.
Right.
So essentially, we want to limit the number of times that happens. Yeah. So again, it's a very cautious defensive approach. He's not willing to go all out and press, right? So if we're hoping for that, unless it's a massive head fake from Berhalter, that's just not going to happen because it just seems like something where he's not willing to take the risk to press high. Yeah.
So I think we do.
So why not sit deep and absorb some pressure instead?
I mean, it makes honestly, it's a fair question to ask, and it is sort of the confusing thing about U.S. soccer is like your point makes sense because of what Berhalter said, but I also sort of disagree with the approach because of what Berhalter's done in the past. It's very confusing. But in my mind, if you're going up against Canada, who, again, as I said, I think Berhalter expects them to be more defensive, to sit back a little bit more, and for the U.S. to have more of the ball, but then be forced to create something. He talked in the press conference about
I think I disagree with that, by the way.
Well, okay, but that's fine.
I don't think what Berhalter said necessarily means that Canada will sit.
No, I didn't say that either. What I'm saying is my extrapolation of what he said leads me to believe that that's what's going to happen. I'm not saying he came out and said they're going to be defensive and therefore here's my plan. Okay. I'm saying that some of what I read, as an example, that they've been working on crossing all week. To me, that means we're expecting to get the ball wide and maybe we're going to have to settle for some crosses as opposed to like cutting it back and finding pockets of space to shoot from.
Yeah.
So I think there's moments like that, and so I would rather see the United States be much more aggressive in their approach. I would rather see them commit numbers further forward and try to put
in terms of defensive pressure.
Yeah, I think so, or just even commit.
Good luck with that. Then.
I want to see more numbers committed forward. So like if we're talking about possibilities, as I talked about, Morris like a little bit further forward, Ariolo a little bit further forward to cut off options to the fullbacks. But then I would like to see, say, a right back of Reggie Cannon, a left back of Serginho Dest.
I think you might get that.
Both of them with the intent of getting involved in the attack.
Yeah.
And also, obviously, having to get back to deal with some of the counterattacks, but still getting them involved.
So part of the Berhalter style of play is to create overloads, right? And one of the ways we haven't created overloads is we have not had a left-back that got forward. If it's Serginho Dest, you have to utilise Serginho Dest and send him forward, right? I am looking forward to overloads of Areola with Dest like overlapping him, underlapping him, because Dest likes to underlap as well. I think that can be confusing for Canada. It will be Richie Laria probably. We can maybe get at him with Areola, Areola's work rate and Serginho Dest's creativity and unpredictability and willingness to dribble at people. Like he might be the best dribbler on the team now that Pulisic's not there. Right. Yeah. Okay, so we've got our wide position sorted, right? We both want Cannon and Dest, and we both want Morris and Areola. Maybe we'll talk about Yedlin later because we have a listener question about Yedlin.
Sure.
We can talk about maybe why we prefer Cannon to Yedlin. What about central defenders? John Brooks is our left centre-back, I assume.
In terms of this is, again, we're going with like what we think is realistic based on what we've seen from Berhalter. I think it will probably be Aaron Long. Because again, I'm going back with if we are going to try to play a little bit higher line, you want somebody who's pacier, who can deal with any sort of vertical speed. That seems to be Aaron Long's game. I should add, the thing I keep forgetting to mention is when he said all they need is a tie, he then said, and that should factor into our game planning.
Okay.
So to me, I think he's approaching it that way. So I think with Aaron Long, though, he gives you some cover for John Brooks to win everything in the air and be sort of physically dominant that way. Mm-hmm. Aaron Long can kind of run in behind and cut anything out that needs to be cut out.
Okay, I'm absolutely on board with that then. Okay. Let's get to striker, because I think that's the most interesting one.
That's the only thing I have blank right now.
If we've got Areola and Morris wide, and then the centre forward is either Giassi Zardes or Josh Sargent. Mm-hmm. I think obviously most people would love to see Josh Sargent, because everyone's kind of had enough of seeing Giassi Zardes miss chances. Even though he makes a lot of the correct runs, he misses a lot of chances. His hold-up play is not that good. A month ago, this would have been easy. This would have been, Josh Sargent, 100%. He played in the away game against Canada. He was not very good.
Not. I genuinely don't know who Gregg Berhalter will prefer here. And I know that's going to drive people insane, but it is the honest truth. And I also don't really begrudge him that.
Performance in Canada.
I mean, he literally started a counterattack, Josh Sargent, for Canada because he miscontrolled a ball when he dropped in to hold up play. He controlled it 20 yards away from him and also up in the air so that Canada had time to get underneath it and run right back at the U.S. goal. Like, if you are looking for your forward to drop in and be like a hold-up option, but then also facilitate attacks, he did not do that well enough against Canada to make me feel like he can definitely do it against Canada this time.
And I know I've mentioned this before, but definitely the plan under Berhalter is the centre forward, say Sargent, comes a little deep with his back to goal, receives the ball, kind of connects play, and then because he's theoretically dragged a centre back with him, Jordan Morris, the right winger, will come inside and run sort of beyond the striker and hopefully into that space that's being created. That's one of the signature moves of a Berhalter team, right? Centre forward comes deep, Morris goes in behind him.
Does that constitute a false nine? If it's the number 9, but they drop in and they kind of try to pull people out of position?
It's just one move, right? A false 9, I think, is more like you look like you're going to play centre forward, but then you go wandering everywhere. Yeah. But the Berhalter centre forward is more sort of from the centre forward position, then deep, then back to the centre forward. Like he keeps checking back home, right? They keep going back to headquarters, whereas a false 9 never goes home.
He's a checking number 9, not a false number 9.
A checking number 9. Yeah. Who would Taylor Rockwell prefer, given Josh Sargent's performance against Canada, but then also Giassi Zardes' previous performances for the United States?
I think Josh Sargent is my answer, and it is because
I'm with you too. I think one bad game for a teenager shouldn't be like punished by you're out.
And like, harsh as it is, because these people are humans, and it's worth remembering that. Like, I feel like I know what Giassi Zardes is capable of when he has his best performance for the national team, and I feel like I've seen that, and then I also know what he is capable of when he has his worst performance. I think we've seen Josh Sargent have a bad performance against Canada. I would like to see him have his best possible performance, and my hope would be that with more time with Werder Bremen, with more time with the national team in camp, that he has more time to gel, that maybe he does come in there and is not necessarily told, but is operating under the assumption that like you are a number 9 right now until everybody's fit, and then we'll reevaluate. And maybe just with that little bit of confidence, that little bit of backing, maybe we see him perform a little bit sharper, a little bit tighter, a little bit better. Okay.
Oh, we both agree, right? After watching we rewatched a bit of the Jamaica semi-final in the Gold Cup and the Gold Cup final against Mexico. Even a not fully fit Josie Altidore was a massive improvement over Zardes and Sargent. The way he bodies people, holds up the ball, and has like a few nice moves to open up space. He is our best striker by a distance.
Josie Altidore? Yeah. Absolutely. But I think in terms of the conversation between these two, it always, like, you're number 9, you want them to score goals. And I do, at the end of the day, back Josh Sargent if he's in front of goal to put the ball in the back of the net more so than I do Giassi Zardes.
Fair
so
enough.
I think that's the other thing. Like, we're talking about aspects of the game, but the core part of what a number 9 should be doing, I think Josh Sargent does better.
All right, let's move to central
Maybe
midfield.
I hope he does better, but it could be thinking too.
Let's move to central midfield. No Michael Bradley.
This is tougher.
No Pulisic, who probably would have been the 10, maybe. Your options are Alfredo Morales, Weston McKennie, Sebastian Lletget, Christian Roldan, and then you've got Jackson Ewell and Will Trapp, who are sort of the Michael Bradley understudies, right? So the big question is, do we go with a Michael Bradley understudy in the Michael Bradley role, or do we just kick that whole thing apart and have a new look midfield?
I think that would be surprising if Gregg Berhalter did that, because that would be sort of blowing up the plan a little bit. Whereas, like essentially, you can't say
there's a strong argument for it, though, right?
No, I don't think so, because I think if you've been working towards like, this is our system, this is how we want to play, this is who can do it right now, but then we've got these two guys who I expect maybe can come in and factor in, maybe Will Trapp less so, but it feels like it's been Jackson Ewell, like he's the heir apparent unless Tyler Adams is fit. to then be like, well, now that he's got the opportunity, like, no, you're not quite good enough. Like, that changes the dialogue a little bit for me.
Can I make what I think is the strong argument,
Sure.
though? That one of the things that we lacked against Canada last time out was like fight and winning balls in midfield. And I would argue that Trapp and Yule, based on my observations of them, are even maybe less effective than Michael Bradley in terms of winning balls. So maybe this would be the game to just say, okay, instead of a Regista-style passing number 6, we go with a rough and tough Alfredo Morales instead.
I get your point about Will Trapp. I don't know if I agree with you as much on Jackson Yule, just because I struggle to think of times when I've seen him like not make a challenge or be overwhelmed.
Okay, yeah. So I would say I haven't seen enough of him to say that he is a bad defensive midfield player, but I do know that his primary assets are sort of opening up space and passing, right? He's not known for his defensive capabilities, which therefore leads me to, I think, correctly assume that that's not a strength that he has, right? I have an absence of evidence that he's good at it as opposed to evidence that he's bad at it, but for me, that's enough for him to not start against Canada.
So then I'm assuming you have Alfredo Morales as the number 6?
Yes, I would go number 6 Alfredo Morales, then I would go Weston McKennie number 8, and I think Sebastian Leggett number 10, because he's shown, I know he's had a couple of bad moments, but of all the sort of MLS midfielders, he's shown the most pass and move attacking verve and recognition of space and all that kind of stuff that I think could be useful the way that Berhalter likes his midfielders to play. So yeah, for me, Morales the 6, McKennie the 8, Leggett the 10.
And I've got Yule the 6, Morales the 8, McKennie the 10.
I don't hate that either. I prefer mine just slightly because of the bit more punch, but I could also see if this is Canada sitting back, then Jackson Yule on the ball is a guy that could be like finding weird passes between defenders, yeah?
I take your point because like you're putting McKennie in your situation as a number 8, which does allow him to fight more. I guess because then I'm like, well, we have the exact same player except I have Yule, you have Leggett. And I don't think of either one of them as being particularly like defensively, like I'm going to fight for every single thing.
Right, but if Leggett's the 10, if we do drop back into that 4-4-2, it's McKennie and Morales alongside each other. And then even if it becomes like a 4-1-4-1, at least it's McKennie and Leggett as the first line of midfielders and then Morales behind them.
Okay. I can see where you're coming from, and like I'm okay with either one, except that you are then basically saying there is no reason to call, not you, Berhalter, is saying there's no reason to call Will Trapp or Jackson Yule in anymore.
Well, horses for courses, right?
What do you mean?
Like this, if this is a game where it's proven that we lacked fight last time, so let's put some fight in it this time, it kind of makes sense.
I mean, I guess so, but like, are there games we don't need fight? Like, I just think that's like. In the same way that you're being like, well, I think you're maybe taking a little bit of his quotes like too seriously. Like, I feel like, yeah, he wants us to have more fight because he was asked, like, what are you going to do to have more fight in the midfield? Yeah. Like, it's the same thing. So to me, it's about he's probably going to have Morales in there to do some of that fighting. But I just don't know quite where he's going to do it. Yeah. But again, it goes back to if you've been saying this guy is like the new one coming through, and then there's Michael Bradley, and there's maybe Will Trapp. But when the time comes, never mind, it's not either one of them. To me, that's like, okay, so maybe they're not at that level, which is fine. It just means that we probably don't need to see Will Trapp continuously called in from this point on.
I mean, maybe if we end up with what I said, Morales as a 6 instead of Yule and Trapp, the Bradley understudies, it would indicate Berhalter's willingness to like step outside of the of what he's been trying so far, and a willingness to be flexible and try something a little bit different.
Which again is why I'm not saying like I do not want what you're saying to happen, because I think it also
don't think it's likely.
Yeah, it's essentially that. But I also think what it would mean is that he had the mini camp. Trapp and Yule had their opportunities to show that they could do the role, and they basically didn't, is the other thing I would take away from that one, that they didn't show they can add the physicality to their game that maybe he wants. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. Cool. Okay, so that's basically our 4-3-3.
And probably Brad Guzan in goal.
Okay, and Brad Guzan in goal. Yeah, we assume, right? Yeah. And I'm fine with that. He's probably not at the level of Zach Steffen, but it's not far off, right?
Yeah.
I like to think of it as, if you think of like, the peak of a goalkeeper's abilities are like way up here, right? Zach Steffen is like going up the mountain, and Brad Guzan's just coming down the mountain, and they're probably at like an equal plane, both a little away from the peak, but on different sides of the mountain. You know what I'm saying?
I'd agree with that.
So I think we're okay with it. We're in safe hands with Brad Guzan.
And I also think from everything we've seen up close, and then from everything we've heard, Brad Guzan is a communicator, and he will yell at that back line, and he will keep things organized, and that might also be a thing the U.S. needs in this game.
Okay, so what if Gregg Berhalter just wanted to go out and massively frustrate us?
Yeah.
What would his lineup be then?
You want it?
Yeah.
It's probably still Brad Guzan, only because none of the goalkeepers really, I think, would...
Okay, no one's going to make you irate.
Yeah.
Right? Matt Turner would be interesting, Sean Johnson would be interesting. Okay,
it's Lovitz at left back.
It is Lovitz at left back.
It's DeAndre Yedlin at right back for me.
Okay.
Because we've seen Nick Lima do a variety of things.
Oh, yeah.
And some of them have worked and some of them have not, but I feel like he would be okay with me. It would mean that we're doing something interesting, whereas I feel like Yedlin, it would just be like, be fast and get down the wing.
Yedlin was horrible against Canada.
And I don't even mean that...
We have a listener question about Yedlin, so we can get into him later.
That's fine. But I just want to say, like, I'm not even saying that as a criticism of Yedlin. It's just that, like, in terms of the most frustrating 11, it would be like, DeAndre, go play right back, but be really fast down the wing. That would annoy me.
All right, who are your centre-backs? And though Berhalter is trolling everybody 11.
A bad John Brooks performance is the best way I can explain it. Because, like, we've waited so long to see John Brooks back and be that kind of dominant center back that if he came in and like scuffed a header and Alphonso Davies ran on and scored, that would be fairly frustrating.
Okay. But I'm thinking more of like when he puts the 11 out, like everyone's head explodes. Like
surprise Omar Gonzalez inclusion.
Yes.
No one saw it coming.
That's what
he was not good in MLS Cup, by the way.
Yeah.
Twice I watched him pass the ball.
I saw his 5 minutes at centre forward.
Yeah, that was something. Twice I saw him pass the ball straight to a Seattle player and launch a counterattack. That was not great. He's definitely beaten to the ball in one of the Seattle goals as well, so not great there either. In terms of realistic ones, it's probably just Aaron Long and Walker Zimmerman would be the more frustrating center backs, I think, of those two.
I think central midfield, the easy option would be, Trapp, Yule and Roldan?
It depends on how you do it. Yeah, I guess it's Trapp, Yule, and Roldan, but that's like not as likely.
It's MLS-tastic.
I had it as either Weston McKennie as a number 6 because now we're trying him in an entirely new position again for the national team.
I wouldn't hate it because it's not Trapp or Yule.
All right. Yeah. But
so I'd be kind of excited about that experiment.
All right. Then, because I had it as either it's Weston McKennie as a 6, Roldan as an 8, Leggett as a 10, or it's Trapp as a 6, Weston McKennie as a 10, and then Roldan as the 8. Something in there.
I think it's Trapp as a 6, Yule as a 6, and Roldan as a 10.
Yeah. There we go. That would be annoying. And then Corey Baird. And
Corey
in terms of
back.
Corey Baird's back, just for that. Jesse Zardes would be the number 9. That would frustrate the most. And I do think, in terms of the other winger options, it's still Jordan Morris, as unfair as that is, because he has. There are going to be the Euro snobs who say he's not good enough, and there's going to be the Euro snobs who look at Tyler Boyd, who's playing in Europe and playing for Besiktas. He should be in there, and they would look at, I guess there's not as many other options for wing play, I guess, aside from Paul Arriola, and Paul Arriola wouldn't frustrate anybody, I don't think, because he's been a consistent performer.
Oh, fair enough, fair enough. All right, so that's your frustrating 11, which we hope Berhalter doesn't pick.
Even with that frustrating 11, there's still maybe it's Weston McKennie's 6, maybe it's Jordan Morris running at people. I'm okay with those.
Before we get to these 4 listener questions that I have here, I have my answer to this. What's the one thing, like in the first 5 minutes of the game, that you could see that would make you think, okay, Berhalter has made the necessary changes here?
Do you have your thing?
Yeah.
Would you mind going first?
So I've already mentioned it, but it would be anything different except for the 4-4-2 mid defensive block.
Okay.
Anything except that would make me happy, because it would mean that he's seen that is not working and is willing to try something else. And I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's the 4-1-4-1 or if it's the 4-4-2 low block or just something else other than the 4-4-2 mid block. Okay. I actually think we're going to see it, because when Berhalter talked about how much pressure they were going to put on the ball, he was like, you want to find a balance. And the balance is in the middle. And so I think that's what we're going to end up with. But I'm just crossing my fingers that we see something different.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then I think it probably
I've already had some good news this week. I'm hoping for that. This will be the icing on the cake.
It'd be good. And then I think it's probably the thing that we disagreed on is like who plays number 6. That's probably a thing I'll be looking for, because if it is somebody who isn't Jackson Ewell or Will Trapp, but my assumption is it's Jackson Ewell. If it's not, then I think that does tell us, at the very least, like, okay, he wanted to see somebody else play that role.
Yeah.
To me, it means, okay, he's looking for other options there to see what other kinds of player he might have.
Okay.
So that's probably one. The other just like little questions I have about this one. Is that all right?
I was going to say, who's more likely to get their wish?
What was yours again?
That they wouldn't do the 4-4-2 mid block defensive.
I think probably you.
Yeah?
Honestly.
Okay.
Yeah. Only because, I think there's a really good chance Jackson Ewell starts. There's a chance he doesn't. I think it's more so that I would expect him to do something to alleviate some of that. So maybe it is like a 4-3-3 and like it's a condensed 3 in the midfield and then it's 3 spread wide or something like that.
Yeah, maybe my thing is maybe more than 2 central midfielders would be magnificent.
That would be magnificent. Yeah. I echo that one.
It would be mathematically the right thing to do.
Again, maybe it's not that I think it will be the most likely one. It's the one that I want to happen the most, is us not be completely overwhelmed in the middle. Mm-hmm.
All right. Are you ready to get to listener questions?
Yeah.
All right. We have 4 that were just sort of, I picked them out because they're sort of specifically related to this game. And if we don't answer them now, then we might never get a chance to answer them.
That is true.
First one is from Spencer B. Spencer B asks, how could Gregg Berhalter work a back 5 in his current system? And is there any chance he does that? So the back 5, I'm essentially assuming means wingbacks, which would mean Yedlin or Cannon on
I actually think it makes a lot of sense.
And Serginho Dest on the other side. Those guys are not unsuited to playing wingback.
No, and I think it's Like, really, it solves some problems in my mind because I think the way it makes sense, I don't know if it's likely, but the way it makes sense to me is Tim Ream comes in, is your left center back, John Brooks in the middle, Aaron Long as your right center back. Okay. You've got some good ball playing there, but you can spread out, and that way you don't have to have your center midfielder drop, so you can keep numbers further up. Yeah, I think it's Serginho Dest as your left wing back, Reggie Cannon as your right wing back, maybe DeAndre Yedlin, but then you could just have Weston McKennie and Alfredo Morales as your sort of two more like dedicated like number 8 central midfielders, maybe. And
so I can tell you the way he's done it in the past.
Yep.
In the friendly against Jamaica in the build up to the Gold Cup, he played essentially a 3-4-2-1. Right, it was a back three, and then it was I think Cannon right wing back, Anthony Robinson left wing back, and then it was brace yourself. Trapp and Yule as the two central midfielders. And then ahead of them, it was Mihailovic and Roldan as two number 10s. And then a striker, I think Zardes, ahead of them. So it's like a 3-4-2-1. But it did create a box midfield. So if Berhalter was looking to go box midfield to box midfield, we could see a recreation of that.
We could. So I would be okay with that.
Yeah, so hang on, Morales and McKennie as the two... Or maybe Morales and like Yule or Trapp as the 2 6s, and then like Leggett and McKennie as the 2 10s.
Yeah, that's possible, right? Yeah, with I'm assuming Sargent ahead.
Yeah, I mean that would be my choice.
Yeah, and then but the other one I wouldn't mind, which doesn't really work as well because it doesn't fit what he's done before, is actually probably maybe you partner Yule with Morales. You've got the kind of two more dedicated central midfielders. That's more similar to what Morales does for Dusseldorf, or at least in the game we saw. Maybe you play Weston McKennie as your number 10, and then you have Josh Sargent who can like combine with him, and then you've got Jordan Morris as your other forward who can sort of hang on the last defender, make the runs in behind if they are sort of committed further.
It's like a 3-5-2 basically.
Yeah, basically,
Or a 5-3-2. Okay,
I'm okay with that too.
Those are possible ways of doing it.
All right.
Ben Hart asks...
And we should also mention he's only done, a back three once, and it didn't go particularly well.
No, we lost to Jamaica.
So in terms of the second part of the question, how likely is it? I would say not very.
All right. Let's see if you're wrong Friday night.
We'll
Ben Hart asks... What are the unique skills that DeAndre Yedlin brings to the US men's national team? Ben says, I saw recently that he has no goals in his 50-something caps. I know he's fast, so should be able to get to the end line, but that advantage is negated by his poor crossing. His defending is reportedly not as much an asset as what he offers going forward. But however, with no goals and poor crossing, what does he really offer?
I'm going to assume the answer to that is at least partially hard work. And it goes to like my idea of he's brought over by Tottenham, then he goes to Newcastle, he stays with Newcastle, he's still there. There are the arguments that it's like, they just don't want to spend money, so he maybe wouldn't be starting for them. But in my mind, it's a player that Rafa Benitez liked and incorporated and utilized. And Rafa Benitez is a very smart manager, even if there were times when I would not have said that publicly.
Yeah.
And so I think it probably means he worked hard and he listened well, and he at least tried very hard to do what his coach asked of him.
Yeah.
And I think that probably factors into Gregg Berhalter's thinking of he's got a player who will adjust what he needs to do based on what he's being asked to do, and is probably more capable than some of actually adjusting and going with what the coach is asking him to do.
Fair enough.
Does that make sense?
Yes, but we both...
It's the second time I've had to say, does that make sense in this show?
We both decided that we would prefer to see Reggie Cannon, MLS right back, start ahead of DeAndre Yedlin, Premier League right back in this game. And it doesn't even feel controversial.
No.
And I can't quite put my finger on why that is. I definitely think it, but I can't fully explain it.
I think because, in my mind, DeAndre Yedlin works best as a surprise option. Like, look at his goal this past weekend where he's kind of darting in at the back post to head home.
Yeah.
But even, for Newcastle, I think of him being most effective as, bombing forward and then crossing it into somebody. It's that, dribbling very aggressively and then crossing very aggressively and seeing if someone's there.
Yeah.
With the way the U.S. have been, and even if they are working on crossing more, my assumption is that's still a diagonal out wide, ball drop back to the right, to the fullback who plays it centrally, who plays it back, and then it's a cross in, and it's less of a smash and cross sort of situation.
Is Ben being too harsh by just referencing Yedlin's poor crossing as if it's a fact?
I don't think so, because I feel like we've been frustrated by his delivery from the wing in the past.
I have.
I've
seen examples of good crosses, but then there's always one rogue one that just goes beyond everybody and out for a throw in the other side.
Yeah, and I
it's
think
not consistent crossing. Put it that way.
No, it's not.
He's not David Beckham.
He's not. And then his unique skills, I do think speed is a skill, and the reality is,
how you use it is a skill.
Right, and if you are trying to catch up on a breakaway,
what you do with it that counts.
It is, and if what you're doing with it on a breakaway is catching up and slowing that player down so that they then have to cut back, you've stopped that attack.
Yeah.
If you're over pursuing and getting cut on and then conceding a penalty or just being completely taken out of the equation, then it's less of a skill.
I will say also Yedlin's a competitor, right? Every time I've seen him play, ever since he was a kid, he's someone who will absolutely hustle, and not just in terms of like being fast and running back, but then like bodying someone. He's really like ready to go to war. You know what I mean? He's that kind of character. So I kind of like him in a team for that reason. But I still think Reggie Cannon offers more.
Yeah. And I think Gregg Berhalter probably agrees.
We'll find out on Friday night.
We will.
Next question, Luke Campbell. Is there a team out there that is using the system Berhalter is trying to implement so we can know what the US men's national team should look like?
All right. I will answer this, but my answer will be I don't know. I really don't.
Okay.
We thought about this. I can't really think of a team that is sort of playing a 4-4-2, but not pressing, but not really being compact either, and still allowing space between the lines without anybody really working to cut that out. I struggle to think of a team that does that.
So I can name you like Manchester City are doing with the ball what Berhalter wants the US men's national team to do with the ball, right? Which is to move the ball around, have like certain positional switches and patterns of play that open up space that players can then exploit, right?
You don't go long unless it's a thing where the other team has committed everybody forward because you're not going long and then you have an opportunity. Yeah, I mean, that all makes sense.
Yeah, but when Manchester City don't have the ball, they come after you, they press, and they win the ball high. I would say I kind of agree with you and with Luke that there is no team in the world that plays the possession style where you like spread everything out, and then this weird, not too aggressive, not too defensive 4-4-2 mid-block successfully.
Yeah.
The example we came up with was maybe Leicester City when they won the Premier League, played a sort of mid-block 4-4-2, but it was a bit tighter, right? It was like Ranieri had everybody within, I think, like 30 metres. Like the defensive line was quite high, even though the centre forwards weren't that high. But then when they won the ball back, they would go pretty fast, pretty direct, right? Like Mark Albrighton would play a diagonal ball for Jamie Vardy to run onto.
Right.
So they did a very different thing when they got the ball back.
Yeah.
So I couldn't name you a team that does what we do on both sides of the ball.
And then the only other one that I can think of...
USA against Cuba. That's the team that USA wants to look like.
Yes, that is definitely the team. I think maybe like there's an idea that Atletico do something kind of similar, but that's really...
Seen this season.
It's really just... Well, I guess this season is different because they're trying to play prettier soccer. But I think in the past it was 4-4-2 defensively. Yeah. It was just very defensive, very well organized, and also that midfield four was pretty tight together and kind of moved from left to right together as opposed to
we don't do that
being more spread out. So I think it's basically I'm just saying they defended in a 4-4-2.
It essentially goes back to this thing that 4-4-2 mid-block is just kind of a bad idea because it's not committing to one thing or the other, right? It's trying to have the best of both worlds and getting neither.
Yeah. And I should add, like I'm sure Bobby Warshaw is tearing his hair out saying, well, this team obviously do that. There are probably teams out there who try this system.
Yeah.
I don't think Gregg Berhalter is creating a whole idea from nothing. I just struggle to think of teams that are very successful that utilize this style.
Or maybe when it is successful, it looks different.
Yeah,
you know
that's also...
It's that we're doing it unsuccessfully, so we can't tell the successful version.
It's also a sad reality probability, yes.
All right, Kaz Tidrick. Setting aside injuries, club situations, current standing with the national team, etc., who would be your ideal current starting 11 for the US?
All right, I think I've got an answer here.
Okay.
Weirdly, I'm going 4-4-2 diamond, and I think it's definitely reactionary in response to us never having enough numbers in the middle. I want all the numbers in the middle. But it's Serginho Dest and I think Reggie Cannon as my two right backs right now.
All right.
It is John Brooks, healthy and strong and unbeatable, and Matt Miazga. Because I like tall people doing tall things. It's Zach Steffen in goal. I really like Zach Steffen. I really liked what he did for Dusseldorf when we saw him. He made a key save in the first half. I think when it was still 0-0, it might have been 1-0 at that point, but he's very good coming off his line, so I like Zach Steffen. And then my midfield diamond, my number 6 is Tyler Adams. My two number 8s are Weston McKennie and...
Alfredo Morales.
No, get out of here. Dwayne Octavius Holmes.
Oh, okay.
That's my number 8 that I want in there.
Like
shuttling, working hard, and helping kind of play vertically into the feet of my number 10, Christian Pulisic, with Jordan Morris and Josie Altidore as my two strikers.
So your width is coming from your fullbacks?
Basically.
Right? Okay,
what could go wrong?
When both get forward, do you have like a midfielder drop into like form a back three? Or is it just you leave two centre-backs and just say, best of luck, fellas?
It's a new world, baby. Best of luck.
See, this is the thing Berhalter would definitely be scared to do.
Oh, yeah. 1,000%. And rightfully so. Like, there are definitely problems here. I think it's just, I like the idea of Adams, McKennie, Pulisic.
Yeah.
But then I think you end up with a lot of the same issues because I think our attack is pretty weak at this point. Our attacking pool is fairly weak. Yeah. And so I run into that conundrum of like, then it's a lot of the same guys who I haven't necessarily loved or don't inspire that much hope and confidence.
Okay. I mean, I still think a 4-3-3 could work.
Yeah.
I like a midfield three of essentially McKennie, Adams. So Adams is the holding midfielder, McKennie, and it could be could be Holmes. It could be Morales. Like basically any three that is combative. Because I would want my team to sort of play, win the ball high and play in transition. So that's why I like that combo.
Do you like the idea of like...
It would have been Jonathan Gonzalez.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah. My dream team of the future was always Jonathan Gonzalez, Tyler Adams, and Weston McKennie in a 3-man midfield.
That makes sense. And then I'm assuming it was Christian Pulisic wide, which is where I would rather see him as well. Did I leave Pulisic? Oh, no, I put him as my number 10. Whew, that's good. Yeah. So maybe do you like the idea of what if it was like Tyler Adams as a 6, and then we had like Weston McKennie and Dwayne Holmes, or Weston McKennie and Alfredo Morales as like your 2 8s, and we put Pulisic out wide on the left, Josie Altidore in the middle, and somebody else on the right. Does that do it for you?
That would work for me, yeah.
All right.
And on the right, at this point, just for excitement, I'd go Tim Ware.
Okay. There we go. Yeah, that's fine with me. Yeah. Okay. I can see either one of those. I'm good with either one.
Or maybe Dwayne Holmes on the right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He can do that too, can't he?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We want Dwayne Octavius Holmes in this team, is I guess what we're getting at here.
There we go. So that's what our ideal 11 would look like. Anything else to say on this game? I feel like we've sort of... We've meandered all over the place, but in a good way, trying to cover as much ground as possible. Is there anything like you are looking to see or you're scared of seeing, or any predictions for how this game goes?
My biggest questions I have going into it, is it Zardes or Sargent? I think that will tell us something. And then I think who becomes the number 10? Is it Weston McKennie? Is it Sebastian Lletget? Is it somebody else? Or do we do something else entirely?
Yep. That
will be another big question that I'm going to try to figure out as quickly as I can.
All right, and I guess the question we both hit on is what type of number 6 do we play? Yep. Is it a Registry type, a Michael Bradley understudy, like Yule or Trapp? Or is it a Morales or even a McKennie or just someone very, very different?
Yes.
One thing we didn't touch on for me is it possible that like maybe Yedlin or Dest or someone like that gets pushed into the attack and plays as one of the wingers?
I think that would tie in with... is it going to be Dest at left back, or is it Tim Ream who becomes like the left center back, and we kind of do that again, in which case it probably does lend itself to maybe Serginho Dest being utilized as more of an attacker.
Yeah.
That's something I think that you and I would like to see. I don't know if we've heard Gregg Berhalter really indicate that was a likely possibility. I think he was asked about that with Serginho Dest.
He was asked about where Dest would play.
He was asked a lot of specific things
He was very specifically asked where would Dest play, and he just basically listed all of Serginho Dest's qualities and then nodded and then waited for the next question.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
It wasn't really an answer.
Not so much.
It was an answer to the question, what are Serginho Dest attributes? But that was not the question.
It was not. So maybe, then who starts at left back is another question. So I've got four burning questions heading into this USA-Canada game.
Okay. And then just generally, how are we feeling? I am very, very concerned that the experiment that I'm willing to see through was showing signs of going wrong because of the last Canada game. To me, in terms of how I feel about Gregg Berhalter, this game is massive, right? For me, this is a really good opportunity to show that you're a good coach and that you can fix problems. And there's every opportunity to do it here. If he somehow fails to do it and we get a terrible performance from the US, I won't be like out in the streets like chanting Berhalter out. I think there are more important things in the world, to be honest.
I think you should, though, because you will definitely be arrested for being a crazy person.
Right.
I don't know if Richmond police are going to be all over that one.
Capitol Police would not know what I was talking about. But he's not even a delegate. But for me, this would be the thing that sours me on the Gregg Berhalter experiment is if he doesn't fix things here against Canada.
Yeah. So what does fix things look like to you, though?
It just means a better performance, basically, right? A better performance against Canada.
Yeah.
I would even take the 4-4-2 mid-block defensive style if it does what it's supposed to do and Canada can't play into midfield and have to go long and we get the ball back. Like, if it works, right? If there's a version of it that works, I would feel like, okay, maybe they're just slowly tweaking this and getting better at it. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I think I am of a lot of emotions right now when it comes to the national team, and I think that
you're not the only one.
Yeah, true. But like I don't love that idea because to me it doesn't necessarily make me feel like, oh, okay, they've figured it out now and they're going to lock it down. Like I think we'll be able to tell if it's like, oh, they've really got this locked up and Canada cannot play through. But I also worry that it's like, what if it's a Jamaica game where they're just like, no, we'll just go long. It's fine. We don't want the ball. We want you to have the ball and we'll sit deep and defend. Then we're not really testing that. And so I don't know if that really solves any questions for me. So I think really what I'm feeling is like optimistic, but also scared, but also frustrated and also nervous is about where I am with things.
I am, and it may be just because I've had good news and I'm like, I think I generally tend towards optimism. I am cautiously optimistic that we see a pretty good US performance Friday night, and it's the beginning of a turnaround, both in terms of the team's performance and how the public feels about the US men's national team.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm as willing to go with you on that one because I think unless it's like a 5-0.
I'm not saying this is a fact. I'm just saying I'm cautiously optimistic that this happens. Right? And I think in a weird way, like I mentioned at the top-ish of the show, like Bradley's absence and weirdly Pulisic's absence might have opened the door to a different type of performance that may actually work out.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the best answer I can give you, the most honest answer I can give you, is I want a game in which you and I come away having lots of stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
Most of it positive.
Yeah.
That like I can't say like, oh, I want the 4-4-2 to work in this certain way, but to be like, okay, we saw how like this was a synchronized movement of this player goes here, he went there. We saw that work and we saw that like nullify this threat. I would like to be able to spot key things that we felt like were progress and signs of this team coming together more than we've seen so far.
What about some in-game problem solving from Gregg Berhalter?
That would also be nice.
Like whatever Canada throw out, I would like to see a Berhalter like half-time or 60th minute change that solves a problem that Canada have presented him with. Because honestly, I don't think we've ever seen that from Berhalter for the US men's national team.
No, and I would flip it around. I'm saying this really without thinking. Have we seen a Berhalter team like come back? Have we seen them fight back and it's like 0-0, but they find a way to win in the 75th minute in a game that kind of mattered? Like I feel like it's usually they start fast, the other team adjusts, and then the U.S. is trying to figure it out.
Just hold on to see if they can get over the line.
Kinda.
Yeah.
And so I would like the U.S., maybe if it is 0-0 in the second half, we see some adjustments that make it be 2-0 at the final, and we feel a little bit better about like, okay, so there's still some flexibility, some ability to adapt on the fly, as opposed to we're sticking with the system, and plan B is do plan A better.
On that
I want a plan B that's actually a plan B. There we go.
Yeah, or like a plan A1.
That'd be
A2,
fun too.
Yeah. All right, Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. One more time, the game is Friday night. The listed kickoff time is 7 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be a bit later than that.
I would assume so.
It's on ESPN2, it's on Univision, it's on Unimas. Watch it on one of those.
All the unis.
We'll be back Friday night to talk about this game no matter what happens.
Oh boy.